Welcome to Magical Memories Unlocked, your guide to events that truly rock. From tips on planning and entertainment to will help you make your dream event come true. Now, without delay, let's dive into your guide to event success today.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another Magical Memories Unlocked, your guide to event success. This is a deep dive into our entertainers. And today we have the great Roberto. We have Rob with us today, who is one of I think my favorite people to work with. He's a great magician, but you know what? I don't need to talk him up. Rob, would you like to tell people who you are, what you do, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I've been a magician since I was a little kid. I do mostly children's shows, but a little more than that. And yeah, I just love doing the magic. I love working with the company. It's always a great experience. I love making people happy, and not everybody can get to say they do that in their line of work. So it's just terrific. And yeah, I mean, I'm big on getting an audience involved, getting everybody smiling, getting everybody participating. I also work with animals, so that's always a highlight in my show. And yeah, I just love doing it and feels like I've been doing it forever.
That's amazing. So let me ask you. I mean, I know so I'm a magician as well, as you know, but I people always ask me the same question: how did you get into doing magic? How did you get started with this?
So I guess when I was a kid, I found some books in the library about it, and I learned how to do a few silly little things with cards. And then I would corner everybody at holidays and make them all watch my little show. So my dad, who was already in entertainment, he was in the music side of the business, but he performed himself, but he also acted as an agent and hired out acts. He said, if this guy loves doing this, we got to get him paid. And so basically, he started reaching out
Wow.
for me and just booking the tiniest shows. I mean, I'm talking when I was probably in about sixth grade. And
Hmm.
I was just doing like little shows for other little kids. And, then eventually we expanded it. And he broke
Oh.
into the bar mitzvah business because there was
Hmm.
often musical entertainment for that. So that's where he got the idea to package music and magic. I can play the keyboard also, so
Oh,
I
cool.
could contribute on both ends. And yeah, basically from there, we started doing a variety show together that we booked out in the Catskills, a lot
Oh.
of hotels and bungalow colonies.
Hmm.
And through high school, that was my often my Saturday night, a trip up there. So
Hmm.
yeah, we built it as magic, music, and comedy. The comedy was the most awkward part for me. Although I
Ah.
do incorporate comedy into my show,
Hmm.
his idea of comedy was doing almost like an Abbott and Costello sketch routine, which
Mm.
I found incredibly awkward. But comedy is, great with magic. So, it all kind of works out.
That's too funny. I had no idea any of that about you. So that is absolutely fascinating. So I mean, it's you've been doing this a long time. Has this always been your career, Beth? Have you always wanted to do magic for work, or how did you get to this point now?
No, it's not my only job,
Hmm.
but it's a really important part of my life because I
Hmm.
don't always get the same fulfillment, from working, in other areas that I get with the magic. I mean, basically, what's my job? It's to connect with people, it's to make people happy, it's to make sure that their big event goes just the way they wanted it to, as far as I'm able, to do on my end. And you
Hmm.
really, it just gives you a good feeling, when everything just goes right and people are just really happy and appreciative, and you know that you were a part of it.
Hmm. Let me. So, in what you do, is there something that you love specifically about it, or something in particular that you really enjoy? You mentioned making people happy and stuff like that, but I mean, Is there like a particular type of event or maybe type of audience that you really enjoy working with more than others?
I always have a positive feeling, almost after almost every show, and I feel like I've connected on some level. But for me,
Mm,
regardless of the audience size, regardless of the event,
mm,
the best show is the one where I feel the deepest connection, and I feel like I really had the audience hanging on to everything I was doing. And afterwards, I see, just the great joy.
mm,
That to me, it doesn't matter, the specific event.
very interesting. Okay. Well, on that note, is there a specific event that you can recall that really meant something to you that you really enjoyed?
I mean, there are just so many. It's hard to say a specific one. I hate to say that, but I mean,
Mhm.
I'm getting as much out of this as they are, which I think is the only fair way to say it. And basically, just any event where, for the entire duration of the show, I feel like the audience was with me, and by the end of the show, they're wanting more. That's what does it for me.
That's amazing. So you mentioned animals. You work with animals, which is day it's not as common. I mean, I used to have a bunny rabbit myself, but post COVID, my wife now has a cat, and cats and bunnies don't necessarily get along, so we don't have one anymore. Not because of the cat, but because whatever. You get my point. Can you tell me like how it is working with animals? Your experience with that? It's just the general.
Yeah, I love working with the animals. I was kind of spoiled because I always had my folks taking care of the animals for me. Even when I
Mm,
moved out, it was I have a show today with animals. I got to stop by the house and pick them up.
uh,
But that's kind of changed. I got my own bunny in the sense that, this bunny is the one I'm going to take care of right before COVID. And I
mm.
think he's sitting up back here right now. I don't know if you
I
guys can
saw
see
that.
him.
Yep.
Yeah, that's Bandit. He's about to turn 7 years old,
Okay.
which in rabbit years is kind of old. But yeah, it's just I mean, especially with him, I grew super close. Number one, because he actually lives with me.
Hmm.
Um, he was a gift from my girlfriend, so I couldn't,
Hmm.
pawn him off on the folks. That was one of the conditions. And yeah, and then basically because of COVID, when I wasn't leaving the house much and I wasn't doing shows, we really bonded. So I feel very close to him. But yeah, basically it's just a lot of training with them. And it's a
Hmm.
lot of repetition. Rabbits are great for magic because they already love tight spaces.
Mm.
If you get them used to a tight space, this is a secure place for them. He loves doing the shows. He loves being hidden. And then when he comes out, he just loves the attention from the audience. I
Mm.
always let the kids, come and meet him afterwards and pet
Mhm.
him, and he eats that up. So he's perfect. I've worked with birds also,
Mhm.
and I still keep a couple of doves, that I use
Mm.
sometimes in shows. When I was young though, and I started doing when I was a kid, and I started doing, the big shows up in the the bungalows and the
Mhm.
hotels. I had a whole menagerie. I had six birds that I would bring with me,
Oh wow.
and the rabbit, and also two dogs, two Pomeranians,
Oh
and
wow.
I trained all of them myself. The Pomeranians obviously could do the most, but still, it's magic. They've got to learn to stay in the place and be quiet, and
Hmm.
then kind of leap out of it when they're produced. So it looks like they're larger than life and couldn't have possibly been hidden anywhere. It must be magic.
They weren't. It's magic, remember?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we had an illusion. I would do just an animal routine as part of that act, and it would give my dad a break, for 10 plus minutes,
Hmm.
where I would just launch into producing the doves. And then the doves, some of them I would vanish by various means, but three of them would end up in a cage that was mounted on wheels with a
Hmm.
perch in it. and I
Mm-hmm.
would perch each of the doves, and then the big finale was to throw a cover over that,
Mm-hmm.
give it a spin, and when we whisked it off, originally there was one Pomeranian, but we decided we wanted another one. There would be two
Ah,
Pomeranians in there.
wow.
One, the standard orange color. The other was a white Pomeranian, which is, somewhat rarer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then I'd bring them out. I would actually light a hula hoop on fire, and they would go jumping through just so we could show them they
Yeah,
were trained and they could do lots of stuff.
that's so cool.
And yeah, and then the white one had a very peculiar thing. Most dogs, rabbits stand up on their hind legs all the time.
Mm.
Most dogs don't really do that, but this guy could. He could just go up, and so I would take a pretend gun, usually just my fingers, and I put him on top of that cage so everybody could see him. I'd say hands up, and he'd go up with his little paws,
Mm.
and then I'd go. And as soon as I did that, he would fall straight back
Oh, wow.
with his and lie on his back with his legs in the air, absolutely still, until
Ah,
I snap my fingers, and then he'd roll out of it and come back to life.
that's so funny. Oh, wow. That's so cool. Who would have thunk? That is really exciting. I mean, why don't you still do that? Did you is there I mean that sounds like an awesome show. So I'm curious.
My dad bought a van while I was
Mm.
in high school just so we could stuff all of these illusions into it,
Yeah.
including that one with the cage. I actually, I don't even have the transport for the cage anymore. I
Mm.
sometimes, when I stop by my folks' house and I'm in the garage, I look at it longingly and wonder, but I don't, keep the dogs anymore. I've kind of focused just on the smaller shows now,
Sure.
with and, love to use the rabbit.
Hmm.
I have two new rabbits.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Who's that?
they're just babies, so they're in
Okay.
training now. But one of them is coming along spectacularly, and he's gonna be just great. And the other one is just so tense and so nervous about everything that I'm
Mm.
wondering where it's gonna go. But I'm working with them.
So I'm curious, how do you train your rabbits? Because that's I know I mean I see the rabbit hanging around your house. Is that common? I mean I know people that are watching this probably have no idea. On a regular average for let's say the average person probably doesn't know how to raise a rabbit or how rabbits operate or act. Or is there something different about how you raise a magic rabbit versus a normal rabbit? How does that all work?
Yeah, no, like, so generally you would raise them the same way. The
Mhm.
only difference is really the training that they get to do, the illusions that they're going to get. They have to be handled constantly, and
Mm.
rabbits don't always like to be handled, but they have to get used to being handled.
Mhm.
I need to know that when I'm using the rabbit in the act,
Mhm.
that number one, he's totally comfortable with everything he's doing,
Mhm.
and that he's going to be really friendly with all the children after the show. I can't be
Mhm.
worried, even if a child is, a little aggressive with him, I have to have no doubt in my mind that he would never be aggressive back,
Mhm.
and so these are just things we work on. And so far, I've got 100% success rate. I don't know with the new ones, if the one
Mhm.
that's a little bit troublesome, if he doesn't get over, his anxieties, then he'll just be a pet, and that's okay too.
That's good.
But yeah, they stay in. They have two big cages.
Mhm.
One is for this guy,
Mhm.
but when you get new rabbits, and these guys are both about 6 months old,
Mhm.
so I got them just over 4 months ago. They're
Mhm.
ready to be weaned off their mothers, between 6 and 8 weeks.
Okay.
So when I got these two new ones, they can't live in the same cage because apparently I'm told they'll fight all the time unless they're raised together. So the
Mm.
two new ones have their own cage, but the
Mhm.
cages are kind of next to each other, and so it's like
Making
visitation hours at the jail, I guess.
that makes sense. I go back to the question about them moving around. I mean, don't you worry about I don't know them doing things when you're around the house? I mean, how does that all work? I'm
Yeah,
curious,
so
and I'm sure other people are.
So they sleep in their cages overnight.
Okay.
And right now, Bandit is out, but the two new ones are still in their cage. I always let Bandit
Okay.
out first so he can have some peace because the other two are going to exercise him because they're going to want to play and there's going to be running and chasing. So right now, he's out
Hmm.
and he'll be out all day. If I have to leave like for a full day of work, then they're in the cages. But if I'm leaving for just a few
Mm-hmm.
hours, they're out of the cages. And
Hmm.
basically, the living room and the dining room are rabbit proofed, in the sense that I don't
Okay.
have exposed wires, which, they might gnaw at.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as far as I know, there's no dangers to them.
Mm.
So yeah, they're generally fine, running around, free. But I don't leave them free all the time, just, I mean, he's been out since about 8 this morning, maybe about 7 this morning, and because I only have to leave the house a few hours at a time. He'll be out
Mhm.
until probably like 10 o'clock tonight,
Oh wow,
and
that's
yeah,
nice.
the other two will join him, probably around noon, just to give him a little time on his own. And I'm going to feed him
Yeah.
first his vegetables because
Mm.
otherwise they'll eat everything before he gets anything.
Okay. And I know a misconception a lot of people have is that rabbits exclusively eat carrots. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, no, that's not true. They love the carrots, but the carrots aren't even good for them. I mean, they're good on some level because
Really?
they've got the vitamins, but there's too much sugar. Carrots are a treat for them. They're
Hmm.
supposed to eat 80% of their diet should be hay. They should be
Okay.
grazing, and they should have as much of that as they want. And then other than that, you're giving them maybe 15% of it is leafy greens.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 5% is, you'll give them some pellets just to make sure they've had their nutrition and
Hmm.
treats. I probably give them too many treats, but, yeah, no, the whole carrot thing, I guess, got popularized with Bugs Bunny. I don't even know that it would be their favorite thing. They love fruits, but fruits are loaded with sugar, so you got to be very sparing with that.
That makes sense. They talk about that with humans too, so that does make a lot of sense. Very cool. So you mentioned the tricks that you do with your Pomeranians that you had. Is there a particular effect that you often do or like to do with the rabbits in particular?
Yeah, there's one that I is my go-to, that I like to close a show with, and
Mm,
it was made by a fellow named Gene Elmo, who was a magician and magic maker in Brooklyn.
okay.
And we had hooked up with him back in the 80s. And a lot of the effects that I have and some of the illusions are things that we got from him, including the test tube bunny. And I guess the test tube baby thing had just become a thing back then. So he called this the test tube bunny. And the idea was, um, get the children all riled up at the end of the show that they're going to meet my bunny.
Mhm.
And how exciting is this? And do you guys actually like bunny rabbits? And you won't be surprised. Almost all of them do. And I get them get them very excited to meet them. But of course, when I finally bring them out after teasing them, it's a rabbit on a cloth. But when they're all
Mm.
disappointed, I let them know. But listen, he's very good at magic.
Mhm.
And I tell him he knows how to make himself vanish. And the idea is that he's going to go into that tube, they're going to see him in that tube, but then a moment later, going to pull out the silk that he's on,
Mhm.
and there's no rabbit on there. But don't worry, he didn't go far. All he did was come off of the silk. And
Ah.
then when we open the tube,
Mhm.
there's no silk in there, but there's a full-grown rabbit that looks like he can't even fit in the tube.
That is so fun. That is so cool. Speaking of magic effects, is that one of the? I mean, I'm sure that's one of your favorites just from the reaction of it. But is there a specific one that you have as a favorite trick that you do?
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be one. And anything that I do with the animals are,
Mm,
favorites, just
mm,
really because of the huge reaction.
mm,
But if I went with a non-animal effect,
mhm.
um, I love the stratosphere.
Okay. For everybody
That's
that
the,
doesn't know what that is, what is the
yeah,
stratosphere?
yeah, no problem. That's an effect with three balls, green, yellow, red, and
Mhm,
they go in that order: green on the bottom, yellow in the middle, red on the top.
mhm,
And there's a cover to remind the children that that's the order that they should be in. So the
mhm,
cover goes over the tube, and we throw them in one at a time: green, yellow, red.
mhm,
But every time we take the cover off,
mhm.
you're in the wrong order. And the children get very excited about this. And I mean, I guess that's what does it for me, because I feel that's one of the effects where I'm really connecting with them. I've
Mhm.
really got them going. I suggest that maybe it's their fault for not knowing their colors, and some
Oh.
of them take offense. Some of them just are very insistent that it's not their fault. We
Mhm.
do it a few times, and then we try it without the red ball, but then the red ball disappears and ends up
Mm.
back where he's not supposed to be. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun.
That's too fun. I love that. I know the effect well, and I do love that effect as well. It is a very it's very much a crowd pleaser, so I love that. Um, it's- so let me switch directions, I guess a little bit. Well, I still go the same direction. Instead of not just the tricks that you enjoy doing, but like you do a lot of these, and I think every performer does the same thing over and over again to get really good at it and get to practice at it. But then how do you prevent it from getting boring for yourself and stale in a sense? How do you keep things fresh?
Yeah, that's such a great point. And the truth is, when I do a show, I'm always trying to learn something new. So I may be injecting one new thing and maybe a couple things that I don't do that often. But I'm gonna have always, if not the stratosphere, another effect, and a few effects that I've done 1,000 times and I'm totally
Mhm.
comfortable with, because you can be forgiven, for straying off or not really nailing it, if
Yep.
here and there. But you've got to
Mhm.
have a solid show, and people generally have to think whatever happens, well, that was supposed to happen. So yeah, so for me,
I was supposed to not find your card. It was intentional.
when my daughter was young,
Hmm.
she would come with me to every show.
Hmm.
And at some point, after her coming to so many shows, I saw her mouthing the words from a couple of the effects that I did, and that
That's
was a
so
wake up
funny.
call too. So I said, at that
Yeah.
point, you got to learn to switch things up so it's a little more off the cuff. So I
Yep.
sometimes, even with an effect that I do, I try to switch it up. I try to see, do I get a different reaction if I try it this way? Is that a better reaction?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're both good reactions, and I'm going to switch off, show to show.
Hmm. Hmm. So your show's not always the same, is what you're saying.
No, no, and in fact, when I have repeat customers,
Hmm.
I'm always able to give them, a different show if I have
Hmm.
to.
That's great.
And I like to think that, I've got at least three complete shows that I'm totally comfortable doing. If I'm told, hey, you've performed for them before, can you
Mm-hmm.
switch it up? Can you give them something new?
Hmm. That makes sense. That's great. I mean, that is a great quality. Not everybody has. So that's really good to hear that. And I mean, I'm sure it's good for everybody to hear that as well. So now let's take a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, for lack of better terms. Can you give some insight into kind of how the how the th maybe something interesting that people might not realize about prepping for a magic show or doing a magic show that requires some extra skills that they don't necessarily realize?
Yeah, sure. You know, Basically, the things that you do 1,000 times,
Hmm.
you learn all the ins and outs of, and you become totally comfortable with. But you forget sometimes that there's so much going on in there, and how long it took you to learn all the ins and outs of that. You're
Hmm.
reminded of this when you do something new, a first time doing it in a show, or
Sure.
even the 10th time doing it in the show, because I'm thinking so much about I have to do this, I have to do that.
Hmm.
Where do I have this gimmick? Where do I have that prop? Where should that
Hmm.
prop be? When should the
Hmm.
audience see it? There's so much going on underneath that you don't even think about anymore for the stuff that you've done, so many times.
Hmm.
But yeah, there is really a lot that's going on. And you're reminded of it whenever you learn something new and whenever, suddenly I'm trying to keep things in my head and I'm not used to doing that. Obviously,
Hmm.
when I've done something 1,000 times and
Hmm.
I know exactly what I'm doing, all I'm doing then is I'm reading the audience,
Hmm.
making sure I'm connecting and I'm looking for better ways to connect.
Hmm.
When I'm doing something new, there is peek behind the curtain, a lot going on behind the scenes,
Sure.
and I can't be worried about, how that audience is reacting. I've got to keep in my head, everything that has to come next. Where did I
Hmm.
leave this? Where should that be? And then what am I waiting for before I get to the next, phase?
Hmm. Hmm. That makes sense. So let me ask you this question: is there something that you've in doing this, you've been doing this a very long time. Is there something that you think a client, a prospective client should know before booking a magician that in your experience either they tend not to know or not tend not to realize is an important thing?
Yeah, I could probably rattle off a few. Um, keep the eating separate from the show. Do not.
Ah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do not, like, I have, there are a lot of parents who just start to get worried. Oh, the kids are, going to be hungry. And so they will actually start bringing out snacks during the show. Very distracting. They will be okay.
Mm.
It's usually a 40-minute show. They will be fine. If they're not wrapped up in the show, I'm not doing my job. I'll keep their
Mm.
attention. They don't need food. They don't need other things going on. Appreciate no distractions.
That's a good one. I like that one. That is definitely the one I didn't even think of that, but that's definitely a very big one. What about? I mean, is there a particular ideal audience size for your show or age group for your show?
Well, I try to tailor my show to what the age group is. So,
Mm,
I mean, and that goes along with what you just said. That's another thing that sometimes the client doesn't think of. It
hmm.
helps me a lot. If I obviously I don't need exact numbers. I don't need an exact age range. But if you just give me some age range, because I really will seriously take the time to tailor what I'm doing for that age range. There are things that I will do for 4-year-olds that I wouldn't
Hmm.
think of doing for 8-year-olds or even 7-year-olds.
Hmm.
It's a different show for them. And if
Hmm.
they're all mixed together, I want to have things for both groups.
Hmm.
I want generally most things to appeal to both groups, but there could be specific things for both groups. One thing here for you, one thing here for you.
Hmm.
As long as there's good audience participation that keeps everybody involved. For me, ideal audience size, I mean, it's just I can tailor the show to the audience size, but it
Hmm.
helps if I know.
Yeah.
So I have literally done, I've done shows for, couple hundred people. Usually my shows tend to be more in the 20 child range,
Sure. Yeah.
but I've done for a couple hundred, but I might need a PA system for that, and the effects that I bring have to be larger, and scaled to that group.
Hmm.
I have literally done shows for 3 children.
Hmm.
I had a show from you guys. This is some years ago. They had everybody cancel last minute.
Oh
This may
no.
have been, shortly after COVID, and the COVID
Hmm.
went around again.
Hmm.
And I went and I literally did it for the 2 parents and their 3 children. And they couldn't have been happier,
That's amazing.
and they hadn't told me anything,
Hmm.
they didn't want to cancel it, it was their kids, and it's still a birthday, let's do a show.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. It's amazing that you're able to still manage that. 'Cause I feel like some people may get uncomfortable in that situation. So being flexible and being easy to work with is really important. But I agree with you 100% that knowledge is power. Knowing what you're getting yourself into allows you to better coordinate it. And I think that's definitely a big one that people forget is that they think, oh well, I don't want them to charge us more or whatever it might be, something of that nature. But so they sometimes aren't always fully transparent. But I feel like when you do give that information, it can definitely help to enhance the experience and definitely deliver a better experience for them in the long run. So I mean, you kind of helped me transition to the next thing I want to talk about is a company like ours, like Magical Memories. How has it been working with it from being a magician standpoint? How have you had the experience of working with us?
I've had a terrific experience working with you guys. I've, met so many new people. I can't think of a show where I had any bad experience. Is there imperfect information, like because people didn't say a correct audience size or they didn't tell us ages? Yeah, but I am all about that flexibility also. Tell
Mm.
me as much as you can and I'll tailor it as much as I can. But if you don't want to tell me anything, I don't care. We'll make it work. I'm coming. I'm doing the show. It doesn't matter. It helps me if someone has a table for me. I bring my own table, but a table to
Hmm.
set props on. Oh, you don't have a table? Well,
Hmm.
give me a couple chairs. We'll put the props up. We will make it work. Once I'm there, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that it's a great experience.
That's fantastic. And you know what? That is the sign of a true professional right there is being able to be flexible and being able to push through and deliver no matter what. So I love that. You've had a long journey. You've done a lot here. It sounds like. Is there something that you're most proud of on your journey?
I'm proud of the idea that I'm out there making people happy. And I always think of what my father taught me when I first started getting into this, entertainment business.
Hmm.
He reminded me all the time, we are entertainers. We are there to make people happy. The
Hmm.
magic is secondary. He says,
Hmm.
my music is secondary. The
Hmm.
number one goal is to make that client happy and make sure that they're glad that they hired you
Hmm.
and that they want to hire you again and
Hmm.
that they'll speak well of you, of the company that you're representing.
Hmm.
That was the main thing. When I was, playing piano as part of the act,
Hmm.
he would tell me, no, 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 it sounded great, but you've got to come down more with your hands. And I would say, I think that my piano teacher, what he would think of that, there's no technique that comes from that. He said, I don't care. We're showmen. We're there to entertain. People need to
Uh,
see this. He goes, I don't care if you miss a note. I care if people get bored watching you. So get going. And and that
that's so
translates over
cool.
to magic too. He
100%.
always reminded me, we're not performing for other magicians.
Hmm.
There are times when you will be,
Hmm.
but generally on our shows, we are not performing for other magicians. We are not trying to impress people with the cleverest way we could do something.
Hmm.
We are trying to give them something magical, something mysterious, but
Hmm.
most of all, something fun.
I love that. I couldn't have said it better myself. So that is very very true, and I love that. It's not about what you're doing specifically. It's about how you do it, how you deliver, and how people perceive it. So I really love that. Um, as we're wrapping this up, I mean, I'd love to just dive a little bit into is it's just the question of is there something specific that coming out of this conversation that you would love our listeners to remember about you?
I would just like them to remember that we are in the entertainment business. We are in the business of making people happy.
Hmm.
And I know that your company is exactly that way. One of the reasons I love working with the company is because they're handling the client. They're making sure everything is going smoothly and the client is happy. And I love to be able to just walk in and everything is going to go just terrific. And and that is always going to be my attitude, and I know it's your guys' attitude also, is that we are going to make sure that the client is satisfied, that the client had an amazing experience.
Love that. Yeah, and that is definitely the reason why I love working with you is you have that same mentality. So I love that. Now looking ahead, we're in a new year. How is there something specific looking into the new year that you're looking forward to? Maybe a new effect, a show that you might have, or something that you want to do, anything that you're looking forward to?
The thing I'm most looking forward to is working with the new rabbits. I'm so
Ah,
excited about that.
yeah.
The two of them are training right now. Um, they're young still. They're only, about 6 months old each. So
Mm-hmm.
they're still too hyper, too crazy. But,
Mm-hmm.
in the next few months, they're going to calm down and it's going to be time for them to try their first show. And I'm
Mm.
so excited to see how that'll go.
Do you have the same trick plan for them that you've been using, or are you going to have a new effect for the new rabbits?
So the one that I use the most that we spoke about before, that test tube
Hmm.
bunny, I've been training both of the new ones on it.
Okay.
The problem is the lion head,
Hmm.
who is kind of the alpha male of this whole group, he's too hyper and I'm afraid he's going to pop out of that thing. So I'm wondering, is there something else I should be training him on?
Hmm.
The other one is a Holland Lop.
Hmm.
He's the youngest. He's just about to turn 6 months. And
Hmm.
he is as sweet as anything and as calm as anything. So
Hmm.
he's going to be great in that.
Hmm.
But I've also been training him on a new effect, that I picked up, this 3D television, where,
Hmm.
I make the story about how, oh, that's where the future is going. It's not flat TVs anymore. It's 3D
Uh-huh.
TV. And this 3D television that I got, but the problem is nobody's broadcasting in it. So we draw a rabbit, and the idea is that that rabbit then comes to life. He's
Nice.
been working on that one, and he's
Hmm.
actually performed it a few times. Most recently, Saturday night, I had a big party at my place, and at
Hmm.
the end of the night, it was petering out, and there was only,
Hmm.
maybe about 7 or 8 of us left. I said, let's get this guy performing. Let's let him do something. And it worked out terrific. So, yeah, I'm trying to train them on that same effect. They're learning that new one. And there's a couple other, productions that I have, but they're a little bit more involved.
Hmm.
So we're holding off on that, until they're a little bit older.
Fantastic. That sounds amazing. I look forward to seeing that because that sounds like an awesome effect. And it all just sounds like a great. So I want to say thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for sharing all of your experiences, your knowledge. And I really do appreciate you being on here. And I know everybody has enjoyed hearing your stories as well. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here at Magical Memories Unlocked. This is our deep dive into different entertainers. If you ever want a magician, if you ever want this guy to come to your event with his rabbits of all different kinds, make sure you reach out to us. We'd love to help you connect you guys. Thank you all very much and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Magical Memories Unlocked. This guide to event success is so helpful, some are shocked. Planning something big, we're here for you with ideas and tips to make your vision come true. Magical Memories Entertainment is the team to make all your guests